All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. Today we're looking at some pretty big global stuff. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's first official trip abroad. And guess what he's doing?
Yeah.
Skipping those typical first stops, like Paris, London, all those places.
Yeah.
And straight to
He's going to Central
America.
That's right.
Interesting choice.
Yeah. And it's not just, a quick handshake trip. This is a major signal from the Trump administration, I think, showing really where their focus is right now.
So we've got immigration tensions, obviously a potential economic storm brewing. And, of course, we can't forget about the Panama Canal controversy.
Right.
So if you've only seen the headlines, get ready. We're going way beyond in this deep dive.
Yeah, and you might think Central America feels a world away, but, U.S. actions there have serious ripple effects, that we all feel, whether it's our economy or even national security.
Absolutely. So let's start with this. This is Rubio's first time stepping onto that world stage as Secretary of State.
Right.
What message are they sending by choosing Central America for this debut?
I think it shows a real shift in priorities. If the previous administration was all about Asia,
right,
this trip puts Central America, squarely back in the spotlight. And it tells us the Trump administration really sees the region as key, not just for, immediate concerns like immigration, but for long-term strategy as well.
So I'm already seeing how this is way more than just a handshake.
Right.
A quick visit.
Yeah.
This is about setting the tone for how the U.S. wants to engage
with
Central America going forward.
And it is right in our backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, this region is practically our neighbor. The decisions made there, have direct impact on the U.S., and that's one of the reasons why we're taking this deep dive.
Absolutely. So let's dive into that a little bit with, the immigration puzzle. We know thousands of migrants from Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, they try to reach the U.S. every year. But we're seeing a recent dip in border encounters.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Well, the numbers might be down, but the administration is far from relaxed about it, and they're viewing this as a symptom of much deeper problems in these countries.
Okay.
Lack of safety, lack of opportunity. Basically, things are so bad that people are willing to risk everything to leave.
And it's not like they're just hopping on a plane. We're talking about incredibly dangerous routes.
Right.
Like the Darien Gap.
But Darien Gap, this dense, treacherous jungle passage, it's becoming a key indicator, I think, of how many are trying to reach the U.S.
Wow.
No matter the risk.
Yeah.
So it's a stark reminder of the desperation driving this.
Wow. Okay. So we've got this complex picture of migration, and then we throw in the Panama Canal controversy. This goes back, to President Trump's campaign promise to take back the canal.
Right.
And that rhetoric is causing some serious tension.
Yeah. Trump is making some pretty bold accusations here. He's claiming that Panama is violating agreements, letting China take control.
Really?
And he's even hinted at using force to regain control. He's saying American ships, both commercial and military, are being unfairly charged, and that's a huge deal.
Wow. No, I know Panama isn't just sitting back and taking this, right?
Absolutely not. Panama's president is completely rejecting these accusations, stating very clearly that the canal belongs to Panama, period.
Right.
And China's denying any involvement in running the canal as well.
So we've got a diplomatic standoff, brewing economic concerns, and the U.S. kind of flexing its muscles in the region. So what does all of this mean for Rubio's trip? Is this more than just talk?
Well, Rubio has certainly been using some of the same language as Trump.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to China. He's even mentioned, Chinese companies potentially using the canal as a choke point in a conflict, which is directly echoing.
Wait, what exactly does choke point mean?
In
this context?
Well, it means a strategic spot.
Yeah.
Like a narrow strait, or in this case, a canal that can be easily blocked, disrupting the flow of goods and military forces. So control over a choke point can give a country a significant advantage.
Oh, I see.
And that's what's making everyone nervous.
Okay, so if Rubio is using that kind of language,
right,
is he really on board with this idea of taking over the canal by force? Or is there more to it?
That's the big question. Despite the tough talk, Rubio is also expected to discuss economic cooperation and supply chain issues on this trip, suggesting a more diplomatic angle as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's two sides to this trip. We've got the hardline rhetoric echoing Trump, but also potential for a more strategic, maybe even collaborative approach.
It's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot to unpack, yeah. This is fascinating.
Exactly. And that complexity, I think, is exactly why this trip has everyone's attention.
It really makes you wonder, is he just echoing what Trump wants to hear, or is he trying to take a different path?
Yeah.
I mean, he's using some pretty strong language, but he's also a seasoned politician, someone who understands international relations.
Yeah.
How do we square those two things?
It's true. He's not known for, just parroting the party line. He's got a reputation for being thoughtful and strategic. He's even been called cautious at times, which is what makes this so interesting.
So is this good cop, bad cop with Rubio trying to smooth things over after Trump's aggressive stance on the Panama Canal?
That's definitely a possibility. I mean, diplomacy often involves, a mix of pressure and incentive. So Trump might be applying the pressure while Rubio is working behind the scenes, emphasizing those areas where the U.S. and Central American countries can actually work together.
Yeah, I can see that Central America plays a huge role in global supply chains, right? Especially for things like the clothes we wear, food that we eat every day.
Right.
If the U.S. wants to keep those supply chains running, they can't just throw their weight around.
Yeah.
They need to keep those relationships strong.
Exactly. And Rubio's background in business and economics, gives him a unique advantage here. He understands how important it is to find solutions that benefit, everyone involved.
Okay, so we've got supply chains, but we can't forget about immigration. I mean, it's been a defining issue for Trump, and it's got to be front and center on this trip.
Absolutely. Trump's hardline stance on immigration is no secret, and Rubio has often supported those policies. But there are signs that he's trying to find a more effective and sustainable approach, something that goes beyond just building walls.
So what does that look like? What is a more, quote unquote, humane approach to immigration?
Right.
When you've got a president who's all about security first.
Well, the reality is that walls and border security don't address why people are migrating in the first place.
Yeah.
It's about desperation. It's about fleeing violence and poverty. And Rubio seems to get that.
So is he talking about like some massive aid package, like a Marshall Plan for Central America, investing heavily in things like education infrastructure?
It might not be that large scale, but there are definitely hints that he wants to address the root causes of migration.
Right.
It's pushing people to leave their homes. That could mean investing in job training, supporting businesses, improving infrastructure, things that create real opportunities so people don't feel forced to flee.
So is Rubio walking a tightrope here?
Yeah.
He has to keep Trump and his base happy,
Yeah.
but also try to find solutions that actually work for everyone.
You hit the nail on the head. He's in a really tricky spot. He's got to balance, Trump's America First agenda with the need for diplomacy and cooperation. It's not an easy task.
It's almost like he's speaking two different languages. The language of Trump's hardline policies, and then this language of, finding common ground and working together.
And that's what makes this trip so fascinating. It's a miniature version, I think, of the struggle happening within the Trump administration itself. Isolationism versus engagement, confrontation versus cooperation, how this plays out could have a huge impact.
So what are we actually expecting to see from this trip?
Yeah.
Is he going to come back with solid agreements, or is this more about appearances and making a statement?
It's likely a combination. I think we'll probably see the usual diplomatic, photo ops and statements.
Sure.
But I wouldn't be surprised if there's also real progress on things like trade deals, security cooperation, maybe even some small-scale programs to address the issues driving migration.
So small steps, but at least moving in the right direction.
Exactly. It's unlikely he's going to single-handedly solve every problem in Central America.
Right.
But this trip could lay the groundwork for a more stable and prosperous future for both the region and the U.S.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Immigration, Panama Canal, economic concerns, and, delicate dance of diplomacy.
Right.
But I want to bring it back to you listening right now. What does this all mean for you?
Here's the key takeaway. Central America might feel far away, but what happens there has a direct impact on our lives here.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, the price of the clothes we buy, the stability of our supply chains, or even how many migrants are arriving at our borders, we are all connected. Understanding this relationship with Central America is crucial for all of us.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a world that feels increasingly divided, we're all sharing this planet, and our fates are tied together.
Yeah.
We have to pay attention to what's happening not just in our own backyards, but in our neighbors' backyards, too.
And that's what makes these deep dives, I think, so valuable. It's a chance to step back from the headlines and really think about the bigger picture, the long-term implications of what's going on.
It's also a reality check.
Yeah.
Foreign policy is messy. It's complicated. There are no simple answers, just a lot of competing interests, historical baggage, unpredictable players.
But that's what makes it so interesting, right? Yeah. There's always something new to learn, something unexpected happening that keeps us on our toes.
Speaking of unexpected, there's one more piece of this puzzle that we haven't discussed yet. Something that could completely change how we view this whole trip.
Ooh, this is where things get really interesting. Remember all that talk about the drop in migration numbers?
Right.
Well, there's a new theory gaining traction, and it's sending ripples through the intelligence community.
Okay, you got me hooked. What is this new theory all about? Are we talking like conspiracy theories here?
Not quite a conspiracy, but it's definitely a twist. The idea is that this dip in migration we've been seeing might not just be about tighter security or changing economic conditions in Central America. There's a chance it's being manipulated, and that's what has everyone on edge.
Manipulated. So you mean like organized crime trying to control who comes and goes?
It could be something like that, but the intelligence suggests there might be even bigger players involved, potentially even foreign governments.
Wow.
Imagine using migration as a weapon. A way to destabilize the U.S. or put pressure on the government.
Wow, that takes this to a whole other level. So Rubio's not just going down there to talk trade and immigration. He might be stepping right into a geopolitical tug-of-war.
Exactly. This changes everything. Instead of just diplomacy and negotiations, Rubio might be walking into a situation where powerful forces are actively working against U.S. interests.
So how does this change Rubio's approach? Does he need to pack a secret agent toolkit now for this trip?
Maybe not a secret agent toolkit, but this definitely adds a new layer of complexity and risk. He'll need to be extra cautious, gather as much intelligence as possible, and figure out who's really pulling the strings behind the scenes.
This is like a political thriller unfolding in real time. It's like Rubio's playing a high-stakes game of chess, but he doesn't even know who all the players are.
That's a great analogy. We're dealing with a lot of unknowns here. Shadowy figures, hidden agendas. It's a situation that demands careful strategy.
So if you had to make a prediction, how do you see this playing out? What should we be watching for?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think we can expect Rubio to take a much more cautious approach. He'll probably avoid making any big pronouncements or getting into public disagreements.
So less talking, more listening, more behind closed doors meetings, less public diplomacy.
Exactly. The priority will be gathering information, assessing the risks, and protecting U.S. interests without making things worse. It's a delicate balance, but Rubio has the experience to handle it.
Well, it sounds like we've uncovered a story that goes way deeper than we initially imagined. What started as a look at Rubio's diplomatic mission has turned into a geopolitical thriller with twists and turns we never saw coming.
And that's what's so fascinating about knowledge. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. And the deeper we dig, the more we uncover these hidden layers of complexity.
So what's the final takeaway for our listeners today? What should they keep an eye on as this story develops?
Pay attention to the subtle cues, the things that aren't being said outright. Watch for unexpected alliances, sudden changes in policy, and any signs of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. The real story is often hidden between the lines, and it takes a keen observer to piece it all together.
It's like we've given our listeners a decoder ring for international relations. Now it's up to them to use those skills to make sense of the world around them.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. We want to give you the knowledge and insights you need to navigate this complex and ever-changing world.
So, until next time, keep your ears open, your minds sharp, and remember there's always more to the story than meets the eye. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.